In the last video, we looked at an introduction to cross-examination. Now we're going to take a deeper look, and specifically, we're going to look at asking questions, or cross-examining your opponent. So when you're cross-examining your opponent, you're going to be the one asking questions, and your opponent's going to be the one answering. When you're the asker, you're the one in control. You're in control of that cross-examination. And that also means you get to decide how long your opponent's answer is. You see, sometimes you might ask a question that has a really long answer, or your opponent might just talk on and on and on with their answer. And don't let them go too long with their answer. Don't let them go on and on and on. So for some people, this is a strategy. When they're answering cross-ex questions, they try to take up a lot of time and just keep talking because they try to make it almost turn your cross-ex into a speech for themselves to continue to bolster their position. And you don't want that to happen because that's going to hurt you. You have to maintain control. So what you can and should do is you can stop them, you can interrupt them, as long as you do it graciously and respectfully, as long as you do it courteously. So you might say, thank you. So if they're talking on and on and on, you can kind of interrupt them and say, thank you. All right, thank you. If they keep on talking, keep saying thank you. Okay, thank you. One strategy I heard, if they won't stop talking, just say, all right, name, thank you. So like if Bob keeps on talking, I say, all right, thank you, Bob. Bob, thank you. Or something like that. And the idea there is that when they hear their name, they automatically stop talking because that's what humans automatically do. When we hear our name, we stop talking. That's one trick that I read from a debate book from somewhere. I've never actually tried that, but people have said that it is effective. The main thing is just remain in control. Don't let your opponent control the cross-examination. You have to control the cross-examination. If you don't, the judge is going to notice. Don't let your opponent answer for too long amount of time. Also, when you're asking questions, don't ask too far, meaning don't ask one question too far. So you want to leave the impacts of your question for your rebuttal speech. So what I mean is this. If you're trying to show that their value is circular and you ask, is your value of liberty or freedom the same as free trade? And if they answer yes, stop right there. Don't ask any more questions. You have enough to get them in the rebuttal speech. If you ask another question and take things too far, you might end up destroying yourself. So, for example, you don't want to ask another question and go deeper and ask, okay, so your value is circular and mine is better, right? Because whenever you ask a debater if their value is better than yours or not, they're going to say no. They're going to say no at that point and explain why it isn't circular. And then that entire line of questioning is wasted because the opponent realized what you were doing and blew everything up. So you want to not ask too far. Stop when you ask, are they the same thing? Like, is your value of liberty the same as your side of free trade? Stop there. Don't ask too far by asking, okay, so it's circular and mine is better, right? You don't want to do something like that because those kinds of questions, they will always answer to defend and benefit themselves. They're not going to just blatantly say that their side is all wrong and that their value is completely wrong because, they want to win the debate just like you. Another thing to note here, don't debate in cross-ex. Cross-ex is not for debating or arguing. And this is a very common mistake. Many new debaters, they try to use cross-examination almost as if it's like a rebuttal speech, where they're trying to push the opponent to admit something, or you can tell in their questions they're trying to get some kind of argument across to the judge with their questions. They're like, so don't you think that this value is a good value? And if they say no, they'll say, but wouldn't you think that, they're trying to push their argument on the opponent and on the judge? You don't want to make the actual argument in cross-examination. Cross-examination is not for arguing. That's not where the debate should happen. Don't try to debate in cross-examination. Cross-examination is just for laying the groundwork to prepare your argument, which you're going to make in your rebuttal speech. So all you have to do in cross-examination, just place some doubts and questions in the judge's mind about the opponent and lay the groundwork for the arguments you're going to make. Don't make the arguments in cross-examination. In fact, some of the best cross-examinations, the opponent and the judge don't even know where the questions are going during the cross-examination session. Only you do. You're asking questions and they don't find out what the impact is and why you're asking those questions until your rebuttal speech. You don't want your opponent to know where you're going in cross-examination because if they figure out what you're trying to do or what you're trying to argue, they'll start attacking you in cross-examination and defending themselves. You don't want them to know where you're going. You just want to place doubts and questions in the judge's mind. And it doesn't matter if they don't know where it's going because they'll find out when you make the actual argument in your rebuttal speech. All right, moving on to actually how to ask questions. What questions do you ask? So you want to do a mix of some open-ended and close-ended questions. There are a few strategies here. First is a chain of questioning. You want to lead them sort of down a trail and use if-then questions. So what you do here is you start with a really obvious question that has a universally agreed to answer. Something like, do people lie? Obviously, the answer is yes. Your opponent is 99% of the time going to agree with you. People lie. So you've got them started on the trail. You've got them hooked, and now you'll continue dragging them down. Then they begin to follow you down your trail of questioning. Then you gradually lead them on to other harder questions, but use their answers to the obvious, the easy questions to trap them. So, for example, I asked, do people lie? Yes. All right, so if people lie, then we can't know. Before I go into this question, let's say you're debating some kind of resolution about the criminal justice system, and you're trying to get your opponent to say that you can't really reform a criminal, okay, like rehabilitate them. So, do people lie? Yes. All right, so if people lie, we can't really know if a criminal is reformed, as you're saying, right? And because the opponent answered yes to the earlier question, do people lie, they're forced now to answer yes to this question. We can't know if a criminal is really reformed because sometimes they can lie about it and say that they've changed when really they haven't. That's just an example to give you an idea. You start with the obvious question and gradually get deeper and deeper until you force them to agree to a question that they ordinarily wouldn't agree to, but they're forced to because of their earlier answers. You lead them down a trail in order to get them to say what you want. I have a few more examples to help you get the idea of this. So pretend I'm asking a question to my opponent. Would you agree that all people are equal in value? And the opponent says, yes, of course. So then I say, all right, then would you think it's unfair if one person were paid differently from another by the same boss for the same work and position at a company? And the opponent says, yes. And then I say, then wouldn't you think, and I keep getting more and more and more specific until eventually I bring it back to the resolution, and the opponent hadn't realized where this is going until now, but I bring it back to the resolution and I force my opponent, based on the earlier question, somehow to get them to say what I want them to say. A third example, pretend your value is societal well-being. This is a possible cross-X question, a line of questioning you could use to get them to admit your value is highest. So your value is societal well-being. You ask your opponent, so how does your value, which is not societal well-being, how does your value affect society? And they'll say, well, it has these positive effects on society. And I say, okay, so those positive effects, those are basically what justify your value. Those justify your value as being the highest in the round, correct? That's why you believe your value is highest. And the opponent says, yes, sure. So then I say, you believe your value is the highest in the round because it would provide this benefit to society, correct? And the opponent says, yes. Stop right there. Now in your rebuttal, you can point out that their value is a means to your value of societal well-being, because the opponent just admitted the reason their value exists is because it would benefit society. In other words, their value is a means to societal well-being, making society better off. And this is a means to an end. You can run that in rebuttal. And notice even here, this is a chain of questioning, but I didn't even really start off with a super obvious question and then narrow it down. You don't have to do that. There are different ways to do these chains of questionings. But the point is you sort of lead them on a trail and get them to say what you want without them even realizing that they're saying what you want them to say. So that's the first type of question, a chain of questioning. Then, of course, there are the common yes-no questions, just questions designed to make your opponent agree with you, a yes-no question. So, for example, you would say, would you agree that absolute power is detrimental to society? You might ask something like that, and then use that answer later to make a point. My opponent even agreed that absolute power is bad. So maybe you're going to bring up, so during prep time, if you notice you're going to make some kind of argument about absolute power in your rebuttals, maybe you can make a note. I'm going to ask something about this in cross-examination. Maybe I can get him to say something in cross-examination that agrees with the point I'm going to make before I even make it in the rebuttal. So you based on the arguments you're going to make, you craft some cross-X questions to try to get your opponent to give you some ground even before you get to your affirmative rebuttal. Another thing I want to quickly point out here, you'll notice the way I worded this question, would you agree that absolute power is detrimental to society? And that's really a good way to craft a question. You kind of encourage them towards the answer you want. So instead of saying, do you think absolute power is detrimental to society, and just leave it open like that, a better way is to make it more closed and say, wouldn't you agree that absolute power is detrimental to society? Or would you agree that absolute power is detrimental to society? You don't have to do it that way, but that generally works better. Anyway, I digress. Going back to the yes-no questions. An example of a yes-no question, another one, say again you're debating about the criminal justice system, and your opponent brings up an example of North Korea, the North Korean criminal justice system. And you want to prove that their example of the North Korean criminal justice system shouldn't apply. So this was actually an exact line of questioning I used back in NCFCA when there was a criminal justice system resolution. So I asked my opponent, all right, would you agree that a criminal justice system has to be just? And he said, yes, a criminal justice system must be just. All right, so then I asked, all right, is North Korea just? Are their actions just and moral? And he said, no. So then in my rebuttal, I said it follows that North Korea isn't a criminal justice system, so it doesn't apply to the round, because North Korea is not just and a criminal justice system has to be just. So North Korea isn't a criminal justice system according to technical, the definitions. And this wasn't maybe the best argument, but it did end up winning the round. I actually won the round partly using this line of questioning. So you can use yes-no questions and create traps for your opponents in this way. And you can even combine yes-no questions with a chain of questioning, which is kind of what I did, and kind of get them to admit something and then use that to trap them later and get them to answer however you want them in a later question, and sort of trap them using these cross-X questions. That's really the idea. You want to trap your opponent using these cross-X questions and force them to say what you want them to say. All right, and then there are clarifying questions, and these are not so much about trapping your opponent. They're just clarifying things. So you can, while you're hearing their case, you can write down, if you don't understand something in their case, you can write down, make a note, say, ask about this in cross-examination, because you can bring your notepad and your flow pad up to cross-examination with you. That's perfectly allowed. In fact, I encourage you to do that. There's no reason not to do that. So you can ask a clarifying question. Maybe you don't understand their value. You can ask questions about their value. When you say this, what do you mean by that? When you say my value is this, what does that value mean? When you say your value is justice, what is justice? What is just? And you can do things like that to clarify things in your argument. And not only will this help you to understand your case, your opponent's case, but maybe your opponent doesn't know the answer. Maybe they haven't thought about it much. Maybe if it's an example, you can ask clarification questions about an example. You could say, could you give me some more information on this example? Maybe your opponent doesn't know. And that'll be revealed in cross-examination when they say, I don't know, or they give some kind of answer that doesn't make sense. And the judge will notice that, and that'll hurt your opponent. And you can argue, Judge, my opponent doesn't understand his own example, which is another very effective way to win. Always connect your cross-X questions and your opponent's answers to your speech. So if your opponent answers the way you want him to in cross-examination, point that out in your speech, because you have to remind the judge of that in your speech. They pay attention to the speeches. They do pay attention to cross-examination as well, but you want to remind them in your speeches. So those are the types of questions we can ask. As to what questions, where to target your questions, you can try to poke holes in the value. All right, the value. Again, the value is very important. You want to bring down the value if you can. So say that your value is liberty and their value is life. Maybe you can ask, is it possible to have life without liberty? And they'll say, they'll answer something. Maybe you can run foundational, that you need liberty in order to have life. You could run something like that depending on the way they answer that question. You could also try to attack the value criterion link. See if you can disconnect the value from the criterion. You don't want to ask a super obvious question like, does your criterion lead to your value? Because they're always going to say yes. But if you can be really subtle about it and somehow prove that the value isn't linked to the criterion, that's helpful. And then the contentions, the examples. So if they present in their contention an example of something happening, and you feel as if that's a strange example and you're not sure if that example really is true, one thing you can do is in cross-examination, you can ask, do you have evidence for this example? Do you have evidence in the round? Because according to the NCFCA rules, you are supposed to have evidence in the round with you for every example. So if they give some weird, crazy example and you're like, I didn't know that, maybe the opponent made it up or got the facts wrong. So ask, do you have evidence for this? And if they answer no, that's a huge problem. And then you can argue, since there's no evidence on this, then we don't know that this example is true, and we can just throw it out the window. So you can ask them for evidence. If they do have evidence, you can examine the evidence and see if it's actually good evidence. You can ask this in cross-examination. Or if your opponent gives some statistics, you can just press them for details. Press them for lots of details. Like, how did they calculate those statistics? Who did they talk to? What kind of pool was this? If your opponent can't answer the nitty-gritty details, then it's probably because they don't know. And if you can show the judge that the opponent doesn't know what their own examples mean, that's very effective because it destroys your opponent's credibility and can even destroy the examples. All right. And then finally, the definitions. And this is very much under clarifying questions. If you missed a definition, because definitions tend to be kind of long and you can't write the whole thing down, so you can ask them to repeat their definitions in cross-examination. And these are also good filler questions. So if you run out of cross-examination questions and you have nothing to ask left, just ask your opponent what their definitions were, and it'll kind of make it look like you know what you're doing, even if you don't quite know what you're doing. But don't ask them for their definitions if their definitions are the same as yours. This especially when you're affirmative. A lot of times what the negative will do, as we talked about, is the negative will just agree to the affirmative's definitions. They'll say, I agree with my opponent's definition, so let's move on to my value. So if they do that, they say, I agree with my opponent's definitions, and then you ask them what their definitions were, and then they say, I agree with your definitions. That just makes you look not so smart. So you want to watch out for that. Generally, you don't want to have filler questions in cross-examination, but if you really need some, just ask for definitions and kind of make it look like you're taking notes on those. All right. If you don't know what to ask in cross-examination, which is inevitably going to happen, it happens to everyone, just start asking random questions about their case. Just start probing what they said in their case. Just look down at their case and pick something like an example and just start asking questions about it. Just ask whatever comes to mind. Just ask questions about the details. Just ask questions. Just start asking around, even if you don't know why you're asking it. Because in the process of asking without even know what you're looking for and probing around, you might inadvertently discover a flaw that you never even thought of, or they might happen to give you a weird answer to something you weren't expecting, and you can use that to your advantage. So it's almost like you're tapping on their case with your finger to figure out which components are loose. Like your opponent's case is this big machine, and you're tapping on little pieces to see if anything's loose. And if you find something loose, then you can rip it out. That's kind of how that works. So that pretty much covers asking questions. In the next video, we're going to look more at what to do when you're answering questions and how to answer questions well.